Hi everyone, so let's now take a look at nationalisation. So nationalisation is of course when the government actually takes control of a company or industry previously owned by private firms. There's been much debate recently as to whether the water industry and the rail industry should be renationalised. So it's quite a topical area, this. Okay, right, so let's look at some of the arguments in favour of nationalisation. Well, firstly, it means that you can exploit greater economies of scale. That is, you can lower the average unit costs of production. This may help to improve the productive efficiency of the firm, of the organisation rather, and it may well be because there's perhaps examples of natural monopolies. Natural monopolies, of course, where you would have one particular firm operating in a market, and even that one firm cannot exploit all of the available economies of scale that are actually potentially available. The market is just potentially so huge, or the actual scale of capabilities needed is so huge. Okay, so perhaps a good example there, of course, would be the rail industry, the water industry. Very, very relevant there. That you still wouldn't be able to actually exploit all of the available economies of scale there to really boost the lower average reduced level of costs that you might want to achieve. But nevertheless, having one firm is more effective and more efficient than having many. Okay, what about attempting to maximise net social benefit? Well, that's what nationalised firms in theory are all about. As opposed to that profit motive, they are about net social benefit, of course. This can also help to control monopolies because what could be private monopolies otherwise are now in public ownership and are working for public good rather than private good. Okay, they may well also have a focus on the longer term. So the public ownership isn't necessarily quite as focused on the short term as private companies and as short-term profit maximisers may well be. So therefore there is an argument to suggest that the government is far, far better to actually look at the longer term situation and what investment is actually needed. It may also contribute to a fairer distribution of resources in society there as well. Okay, why is this, that last point? Well, it ensures that even poorest households would be able to gain access to those given services. Okay, so these downsides here. We've got misdirection of public resources. Of course, there's an opportunity cost argument here. How effective, how efficient, and how dynamically efficient are these publicly owned firms likely to be? Okay, what about the potential for crowding out here? That actually having nationalised industries may actually reduce the level of private sector investment and of course increase borrowing costs more broadly across the economy, which would further aggravate private sector investment in the economy by raising those borrowing costs. Okay, diseconomies of scale. Yes, they might actually go too far in terms of the actual scale that's needed, produce way too much and the actual quality be poor, or the actual cost level be just way beyond the lowest productively efficient level. Okay, and there can also be perhaps a lack of dynamic efficiency, so a lack of profit incentive means that they don't maximise the profits, so those profits don't get reinvested into providing much better services further down the line. So that can also be another argument here. And there's also the final point there regarding the likely outcome being excess demand for a given service. Okay, so you think about nationalised industries. Of course you have healthcare, you have education, but we also of course have the public corporation as the BBC, and there's obviously a lot of debate as to how we should actually go about funding the BBC and whether the licence fee is the best way. particularly when we see competitors like Netflix and Amazon and so on. Anyway, let's have a look at some of these evaluative points, just highlighted in purple here. So which sector is going to be most efficient? Is it the private sector or is it the public sector? Which sector is likely to be most efficient? Why? Okay, what a great argument that really presents you with. There's also, of course, the need to regulate any monopoly, and therefore, is a publicly owned monopoly better than a private monopoly? Okay, and finally, does nationalisation, the whole argument in favour of nationalisation, suggest actually that profit is something that is bad? So is profit something that we should be a little bit scared of? Does profit suggest exploitation, perhaps? Okay, there we go. Some interesting arguments. We'll finish up with deregulation. Thanks, guys.